Getting leaner. It is happening. It's effectively taking place. It's a lot harder when you let it go. It's a lot harder when you get older. It's a lot harder, period. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a little walking session here. I've been off for three days, concluding half the day today. I was off yesterday, off the day before, so Monday, Tuesday, off all day today. Had way too big a meal this morning, but I'll be going into my day 7 of carnivore ketosis tomorrow. Do I feel good about it? No. Do I feel sheepish talking about how I don't like to eat animals? No. Where do you think that term comes from? We put animals down constantly for their nature, and yet we celebrate people who without conscience follow their nature. I'm not talking about the man that is pure, I'm talking about pure man. Pure man's evil. Pure man is linked to something very evil. Very evil. I had suspicion of people. So we like to delineate the fact of people, but it says man. Did you ever realize that? It's not to be sexist. No, you're wrong. That's where women are men too. In fact, they want you to be defensive and angry as human females that you may be. And it's a concept. No, you're a man. You could say, oh no, that's men are the ones who have nipples. Men are the ones who, and women, when you turn that dial, grow enlarged clitorises, start to grow facial hair, take on masculine traits. No, my contention is that everything goes toward masculinity and maleness, and that it is the raw potency of maleness that stupefies and is blocked by these strange demonic clandestine organizations. Even more so that a female, ultimately, human female, females all around celebrate their maleness. So I think it would be efficacious for people to recognize and exercise the raw potency of masculinity within them, and for women to celebrate this as well. Feminism was a CIA operation. That is to say, there's one hell of a lot of strong women, even more so. How many people do you know that are as philosophical, as esoteric, and straight to the point, ruthless, cutting edge, like Ayn Rand? Look her up. Look up Ayn Rand. Because just in a sentence, Ayn Rand talking about edicts and the autocratic system that's in play, and the fact that she couldn't say, let's celebrate masculinity as a raw, potent essence of universal quality, right? But what she could say is, that's not these people. That's not this Black Lodge. In fact, if you look at it, what do you think a wizard or a druid, right? or what's the word I'm looking for? I keep wanting to say hogwart. Just got through working out. All the blood flows in my stomach from the huge meal I had. It's definitely not in my brain. Come on. Come on. Druids and witches and come on, roll out. Fuck it. I hate not being able to remember things. Something so easy. Something so easy that's on the tip of my tongue. Can't even say it. It's a psychical, spiritual block if it's happening. I'm not the type that likes to move on when I can't remember something. Yeah. So fuck it. But I think if you look at Michel Foucault's work and you take what he was saying in a very perspicacious, intrinsic, intellectual manner, you'll see the chiral positioning that I'm talking about. In that he's taking on a feminine notion, and even more so, his homosexual sadomasochism being the display of what Michael Segru would call, he was like Nietzsche's son, but he was like his corporeal, ephemeral son, so to speak, you know. So he was living out all the things carnal that the intrinsic philosophy implied, and it leads you nowhere, right? But his overall sentiment of seeing the soul as the issue at hand and not the body, that he said, the body is who you are, fuck the soul, right? And before Michael Segru passed away, he was stupefied by that if you look at his lecture on that. But in that, Michel Foucault, he describes it. He describes it very blankly, plainly as can be, and he uses the citing of many philosophers in his work. And it's kind of like, why don't you just try it on? You know, try it on. So I think it leads directly into Nietzsche's flat time, which could be heavily looked at and related to thick time, right? And all these different postulations of time in a measurable status as all of these displays occurring, let's say, how else would we term it than say synchronious, right? But the chiral aspect is it is not in, they don't have to respect one another, but they will, on violation of a set algorithm, right, a tempo, they will be held by a certain evolution, a standard. Like you could almost say the string theory or the standard model represents this, but time and space as a tempo, right? As a tempo. So you have these different spheres in operation, literally, where frequency meets wave, creating separation points for shift light, right? Where you have this, let's just say, I would say it gets more heavily into electrons, but for the discourse, let's talk about photons and say it's the rate of collision that creates that wall of distinction. And then echoes back certain substrates of light. You know, you're most likely looking at quarks, but then a lot of the recent studies on time working in reverse, you know, you have to start looking at a lot of the boson and neutrino studies that are going on. And I make the point often is that these different particles, are transitionary and reducible down to, I would say, two. I would say that when they say there are 11 dimensions, I think what they are doing without saying it, because they can't sit on one side or the other, is the majority rules. You have 6 spheres on one side, or 6 points of interest, like Metatron's cube, that center that you see in the water molecule. You see it all around, right? The 6 spheres of the center. And then on the back side, you see 5. Because you're not looking at it, the display of your ego and the chiral aspect of the all ego is not going into coitus, locution, interplay. But when you get around to the other side, you may have the 6. And once that 6 is there, that right there would be what fundamentalists like to call the Luciferian agenda, the satanic agenda, right? The, like, Nietzsche talking about the overman, the Ubermensch. It's a scary thought to think about the fact that you really are talking about the devil incarnate. You really are talking about the potency of the male. But then look at all the depictions and renditions of the female in drag, from the Mona Lisa to the Statue of Liberty. So you have this idea of man in transcendence, but man in transcendence isn't limited to someone who has testicles, right? Who's fighting more to display their masculinity? And that's what you have to call it. Like, let's break it down, Ayn Rand, right? And instead of you arguing against being masculine and male and displaying a male, displaying the male inequity first, and then priding yourself. Who are you? What are you? It's like all those attributes, when you are displaying the height of who you are, your hormones are coming into play. You stay in that state of mind long enough, you're going to have hair on your face, lady. You know, you're going to start growing an extra nugget. And then you're going to understand what that means, you know. I would say females who really get into bench pressing, I mean, we're talking like 300, 400 pound bench press. They get it. They can be like, oh, I'm still a lady, but if I decide that I want to be, if I want to put that clothing of the lady on, but how many men do you know that are doing the same fucking thing? It's like we're stuck in this juxtaposed antithetical position in opposition with ourselves because we are faced with the fact that we know so much that chiral aspect to us is us. I guess what I'm saying is that as everyone's backing away and saying, let's back away from this false notion that like the whole thing, I am God. It's like this esoteric concept. And it's like, no, have you really absorbed it? The fact that you are being blocked from the display of who the best that you can be. And when you build that momentum up, you become something otherworldly. You know you have it. I know that I have it. Bowser is a predator. Cool. Imagine Dragons. Yep. And you do. You do, man. But yeah. Dragons. Dragoons. Villain. Villain. Do you know the root words of those? Feudalism. Neo-feudalism. Do you know that we are the villains? Do you know that that's just like calling you a terrorist? Or in these other, or infidel, or profane, as the Masons like to refer to us. I'm not talking about the Masons like Shaq, who goes and gets his... By the way, I got these burgers today. I ate my Shaq burgers. I'm broke. I'm on carnivore. You ever had these things? 73% meat and the rest fat. That's some fatty meat. Got chicken, bacon. And I'd like to say I don't want to eat like that anymore, but we're waiting on some eggs. They didn't have eggs, oddly. I'm always tripping out when they don't have eggs. It's like Walmart doesn't have eggs and they're trying to sell their eggs and they're trying to sell them for close to 40 cents an egg. For youngsters, they don't understand that. But you will. And I was watching last night Ready Player One again. Thinking about how philosophically that's exactly where we are. But that time will never come because none of us are going to even have a parking lot to put a mobile home or an RV 6 stories up. But I mean, you realize in that movie, those people died, right? All the people that were in those stacked RVs, mobile homes, I'm sorry. If you ever studied Pierre Proudhon and what anarchism is and what mutualism was Bitcoin before Bitcoin existed. Look it up. The French government has been a very evil system in play. Where do you think feudalism came from? But the study of Tartarian Empire, I'm not jumping on the bandwagon with Alexander the Great and Napoleon, but I'm not refuting it either. I'm not saying that there's 1,000 years missing gap either, like a lot of those folks. It gets into these wild concepts like flat Earth. But how about if we were to say between 300 AD and about 800, it seems like there was missing time, maybe all the way up to 1000. Seemed like there was missing time, but then when you look at the historicals, and that's why I think biohistory is so important to look at and to go back and do more precise calculations. But if you watch Stellium 7, he gets into the fact that petrification can occur rapidly under completely different circumstances than what you would think, and therefore even fossilization. He talks about the titans, the huge trees. Hey, Amanda. And I'm just walking. I'm doing keto. God bless you. And I never know whether or not I'm cursing or blessing people, but I believe very much in the power of God. And I try not to vacillate on the experiences that I had because they go back a ways now, changed the course of my life. But I believe that what we think life is, we think of it in a very selfish way, and we are led almost like a bone in front of a dog, and dogs aren't even that gullible, right? And I think things like money and other interests that we've had passion for are misappropriated passions. And yeah, you could get into passion of the Christ. You could really look at it like that. But I don't like to come off on a high horse, but I do believe that is our destiny, if you will. That we have been destined to doing something very great for a very long time. And that recognizing God in you, the God force in you, it can get really tacky because there's so many people who have talked about this. But I think ultimately females are being suppressed in the sense that they are being suppressed from showing what can only be considered masculine power, but it's not masculine power as in existential masculine power. It's intrinsic within all of us. It's the opposite of the Kali Yuga. See, they always try to lead us in the wrong direction. But when you look at the philosophers there on the other side, and they're looking at the male component. And now females are fighting in wars, they're peace officers, or however you want to term it, police, working construction sites, heavy equipment. And it becomes extremely paramount and important that the efficacy of the male force is, and I think a lot of a lot of grandpas that were like war heroes. Got to pull my pants up. I got a pair of sweats under these. Don't worry. So a lot of grandpas that were like war heroes, and yeah, I work out while I'm sort of walking and doing my thing, and and I have no ass, so my pants fall and it inhibits my steps when I'm walking. To TMI, but it's just the truth. When you lose a shit ton of weight, you're not going to always lose it in the places that you want to, and that's why you don't want to let things get out of control. So that's why when if you get obese like I recently pretty much did, I still had a decent amount of muscle on me, but that's what all guys say, right? But it gets into this false masculinity of being big, having this size, and then when you look at who we're really basing that on, and like you go back to what they used to call the Hemingway hero. This is before any of our time, way the hell back, and it led into John Wayne and all these other. And when you look at someone like that who really has this unrealistic portrayal of a man, they're outright fucking abusive people. And then it makes men look bad, but they're being men for men. But then there's like this constrained homosexuality going on there. I'm blind. Lions, how you doing? Yeah, so just shooting the shit. Anything that you want to talk about? I'm back on my walk. I took 2.5 days off. I was walking 80 miles per week for the last 2+ weeks. For the past 4.5 months, I've been walking over 50. And I reached this place, and much of the time I was doing keto. So I would do the walks in the morning, no food. And what happens is your thyroid just starts going crazy to the point when you rest, your metabolism is just. So I just did about 8 sets, did some body weight squats, pull-ups, inverted push-ups, leg raises, sit-ups, and what else did I do? And I did a set of single arm push-ups, which just take it out of me. Just a lot of core. And when you're eating a lot and you don't have a lot of blood flow going throughout the periphery. So like I talk about things where I got diverted back in 2013. I had one of the most riveting experiences that I tried to like talk about it, write about it, but there's just no way to casually describe it. And what I finally came to is like, people are going to all go through similar for themselves in one way or the other. And be careful what you wish for. But when you really want something, or you think you want something and you're going for it, you are the key to unlocking all the things that you feel inside of you. You know, as a young person, if you're young, the things that you feel, where you feel this divine connection, it's real. But once you unlock that, you're not only unlocking all your potential of what would be thought of as benevolence or good, you're unlocking the whole thing. And it really is about you and who you are and what you bring to the table. And a big part of the Council of Nicaea, if you follow that, you know, on into biblical prophecy, the King James, of what they allowed in the Bible, why it was allowed, and the heavy themes of reincarnation. You know, let's just leave it at that. Were left out. Many other things that get into the Book of Enoch and the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Mary, even the Gospel of Judas Iscariot. You know, I've read all those years ago. I used to go into the Gnostic archive. Now they make it harder for people when you go online to read those. But the information's there at your disposal. But more so, it's right here on YouTube, on all these videos that we watch. The theme will just keep coming back. As you gain this interest, you go down that rabbit hole, and it starts to recognize your algorithm, which is a certain tempo, right? And when you're all there right now, it's going to feed you things that you like, that you have a propensity to like. And as that happens, it's unraveling the archives that we recreate. You could look at it as the Emerald Tablets, the Hall of Amante. I studied this years ago. I was looking into a lot of the stuff that Billy Carson talks about 12, let's see. Yeah, about 12 years ago. Prior to that, I didn't give a shit. I was trying to be a robot. I was making six figures. I was a top trainer for Equinox Fitness. I had like a client list of 65 plus people. I was void and empty inside and didn't understand why that didn't fulfill me. And just now, I've just dropped about 80 pounds. Might be embellishing a little bit, but it's really close to that. And allowing myself, as I'm older, to utilize those skills. So I still have, after all those years, I still have a performance enhancement specialist, corrective exercise specialist, shared care certification, personal trainer, advanced personal trainer, core conditioning specialist. What kept me from going back into the field was how I would get into this existential crisis, right? But more than that, I would start, if I could block it out, I would see the people around me manifest and go through the anxiety-ridden, laborious, psychical, esoteric process. And that's where I get into, like, I break into Nathaniel Gillis's work and the Moulters that he calls them, Steve Mira, Barry Fitzgerald. I had to know. Like, I had to look into this mainstream concept or idea of what these things are, you know, and the fact that they were present and prevalent in my life. If they wanted to just kill you, I believe there's certain laws that have to be followed, and I wouldn't even call them laws. I don't think it's as straightforward as just tricking people into going to hell for eternity. I think the postulations that, like, this is what you'll see coming out now too, and this is just because I stay on it. The idea that we're the aliens leads into the idea that beyond philosophical measure that we are the demons. The postulation that this is like, you know, hell, it's not just as clear cut as a Faustian deal, right? Like the whole, what was it, Mephistopheles, the devil, right? So this leads into the work that's being done on the Black Lodge, right? That leads directly into the Knights Templar and the fall of the Knights Templar into corruption and perversion. And the fact that no, men don't just disappear. And even if you ever watch David Icke's interview years ago, you could look it up on YouTube. It's the Zulu chief, his interview, several hours long, and how the Zulu talked about this reptilian, like they even had like these UFOs and this garb that they put on. I think it's still on YouTube. It was probably like 10 years ago that I was watching that video last, but it was very telling, you know. And do I think David Icke is I think David Icke is one of those clandestine. I think he could be seen more as an esoteric glowy for this Black Project operation that's talked about on the Sean Ryan show and elsewhere. Have you been watching those with Joe McGonigal, right? And Colonel Alexander? Wow, those are some riveting. But you know, and those guys don't seem like they're privy to the occult. Like in the past, that's the first thing that would happen is people would just jump to this conclusion that they are of this sort of brotherhood clandestine organization. But what I'm going to tell you is that's why looking into Rudolf Steiner is so important, because he lays out the fact that these things aren't happening anymore. That there's like when you look at eons or aeons, you look at this 26,000 year cycle. There's a refresher on that if you want to go on Leak Project with Rex Bear and look into somebody that he's interviewing. But I couldn't watch that interview because the guy was just so pompous and full of himself. But I know that I'll go back and watch it later. It's just sometimes there's so much hubris involved in the way that people discuss their background that it's like, what am I doing here? But I understand it's just to establish credibility, right? And that's mainly what's always being criticized the most. But there's it's a 23 to 27,000 year cycle, and it's the passing of the North Star to another star, and there's always a different North Star. A lot of people aren't aware of that, and it always falls within like a few degrees, like it's like a 3 to 6 degree, right? And it determines a lot, but so much is based on the zodiac, the star alignment, the star placement, where we fall under the stars. And on one side, when we talk about this chiral positioning, it really is about the strong force and how prevalent that is, but also the weak force of when, like if you take two magnets and put them together as you're moving them away, that force, there's a point where the electromagnetics are dropping off considerably. And that is that extra force right there, right? It's like a spongy spring action, but that you almost could look at that as if it's 0 point energy, in my opinion. And when you look out in space and you see that the planets are churning and spinning, you know, and Earth's spinning at like over 950 miles per hour, you know, you start to see the positioning and how there's this momentum force built up. And I guess my point to that is we think that we're removed from that stress, but we're getting that CME feedback right now. If you ever go on Mr. MBB 333, he was live just a couple hours ago talking about this. Like, do you feel it? Do you feel the solar flares from the sun? And they're like junction points or windows that can literally be looked at in a conical way. And have you looked into spinners? Have you looked into spin energy? Not swirl on or spin energy, but it looks like spiners, it's spinners. So it's kind of like this idea of you'd have to go in and check it out. It's in physics. It's very very hard to describe. Who is it? Mullen on toe theories of everything. Kurt Jamungle. I'm not talking about Gary Nolan. So anyway, I'm gonna get back to my walk. I'm not really sure why I was even doing a live this time around, but I guess I just kind of wanted to get some of those concepts and ideas out. But the blood flows like in my stomach. I'm really out of it from being on ketosis. There's a lot that I want to talk about, but my brain just doesn't work right. And so I am going to be trying to get more information in front of me so that I can address specific things in a credible way and come with that and talk about specific subjects and set up my live way ahead of time to talk about such things, you know. And my areas of interest are broad, but I don't think that is a very good description. I think everything's kind of, including ourselves, are traveling into this sort of singularity, if you will, and not Ben Gortzal's, you know, singularity idea, but that also, but a singularity that could be looked at a little bit more esoterically, like a unity sort of thing. His wife left. No, my wife didn't leave. A little too highbrow for you. But I understand how things turn to comedy right before catastrophe. But you really need to watch what you put out there because it will come back on you, man. Even the most sardonic snarkle comments, you're putting energy out there. All right, so peace be with you.